Hey, Happy New Year. Happy 2021. I'm Lisa Roney, an associate professor in the English department here at UCF, where I've been on the faculty since 2003. First, I want to just do a little introduction of me so you'll know who you're dealing with, and then talk about the course just a little bit. Um, First of all, I have a lot of interest as a writer. So I have an MFA in fiction writing from Penn State University, but I also have a PhD in American literature. And so I hope that, I know this course has some quote unquote creative writers and some quote unquote scholars, and I want you to know that I'll understand you either way, whichever way that you consider yourself primarily, or if like me, you're kind of someone who is interested in both things. Even before that, I did a lot of writing in my professional life and editing for a variety of publications in the advertising world and in the legal world. Um, I got my MFA in fiction writing, but my first book was a memoir, and I was hired to teach mostly nonfiction at UCF, um, and will be doing more of that in the future. But I write in fiction, nonfiction, and poetry, and I just right now I'm finishing a novel draft that I hope to get back to revising this year. Um, this is my first semester back teaching quote unquote regular courses at UCF, because for the past 5 years I've been editor in chief of the Florida Review and Aquifer, the Florida Review Online. And I love being an editor, but I've really considered it time for me to get back to my own focus on my own writing and being in touch with students a little more, as opposed to the demands of all the other writers that we published from all over the country in the Florida Review. So, about the course, it should be fun. I am fascinated by the topic of this course. I actually invented it a few years ago, though it's been taught more recently by Micah Hicks and Judith Roney, who is not my cousin, though the name would indicate she is. Um, and this course really should be a source of fascination for all of us. It's a place where we get to pause and think about how society sees writers, but perhaps even more importantly, for us to think about how our own identities as writers have been influenced, how we develop our ideas of who we are as writers. And the reason all those years ago that I invented this course was because I kept encountering students who seemed compelled to mess up their lives, um, not so much because they kind of had that natural propensity or had difficulties that they just couldn't overcome, but because that's what they thought writers were supposed to do. Um, and so I started reading some studies, and I read some studies that showed, yes, there's a little bit of a correlation between being a writer and mental illness, for instance. We all think about, the mad genius. And so there are some correlations, although mostly that's depression. It's mostly not psychosis or anything crazier than that. Um, and I felt like these stereotypes didn't deal compassionately or realistically with the mental illness that was there. And so I kept reading and reading. And what I found in actuality is that there are a couple of things, a couple of factors that are much more important in people becoming writers and or successful writers. And one of those is an elite education. So you're not going to get that at UCF, although you will probably still get a good quality education, and I certainly hope so. And I hope that you will take advantage of all the potential opportunities you have to supplement what goes on here, and maybe move on to an MFA program or a graduate program at an even more prestigious university, which a lot of our students have done. So there are things that you can do about that factor. But also, I found out that, what mostly sets writers aside and makes people into writers is reading. Reading, 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 and writing, 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 writing. So strong dedication to the craft of their work, and learning about it by reading other writers. And that we can do a lot about. But I also read a book by a writer named Donald Newlove, And it's called Those Drinking Days, Myself and Other Writers, in which he talked about how drinking actually ruined many people's talents rather than letting it out. And that book was formative for me because that I read it at a time when I had several friends, writer friends, who were ruining their lives. One of whom actually became psychotic and ended up going to jail for stalking someone. And then another friend of mine who always drank when she wrote and who started losing jobs because of it. She was a high school teacher, a private high school teacher, and lost several jobs because of the drinking. And I started to wonder, what role this had. What did people believe about this kind of lifestyle. So those were my entry points into thinking about all these issues, where our ideas about writers come from and how we should be conscious of them. I want to say that it isn't all bad to create and have a persona, even potentially a wild one. They're very appealing to mass audiences, for one thing. And there are ways in which they can work sometimes very well. But we want to think about the choices that we have and opt out perhaps of the asshole-ish alcoholism choice if it isn't helpful to actually becoming a writer. And this led me to further think about all the different types of writers that there are in the world and what different purposes writing and literature serve. And we'll get to some of that with the course too. So I hope you're as excited as I am about it, and I look forward to going on this journey with you and to hearing your thoughts as your ideas about it all develop. Thank you. See you soon.